Welcome students. This is Associate Professor Jaideep Manocha, Department of Information Technology, RA College of Engineering and Information Technology. This e-lecture is for final year IT students. Subject is software testing and validation. In this lecture, we are going to consider the topic test process, which belongs to unit number 5. So let us start the topic. Students, in this slide you can see what are the main points those we have to consider when we talk about test process. So our first point is how to put the things together and how to make a baseline of the test plan that will put for testing. Second is specifying the test cases. Third one is traceability matrices, those we have to update. Fourth one is identifying the possible candidates for automation. Next one is developing and baselining the test cases. Next one is execution of the above and keeping the matrices update. Next one is collecting and analyzing the matrices. After that, preparing a test summary report. And next one will be the product will be recommended for release. So we will see the criteria for release. Okay. So let us start with the first point, that is putting together and baselining a test plan. So basically a test plan act as an anchor that you know better because you have done study about it in the last lectures. So basically a plan is everything. So whenever a plan is finalized, an organization will arrive at a design or at a template or at a blueprint for test plan. So if still there are some changes, then changes will be made. It will be reviewed by the authorities and approval will be there. That means it should be approved by a competent authority who is dependent of the project manager or directly responsible for testing. After this, the test plan is baselined into the configuration management repository. This is the final thing. So when the plan is baselined into the configuration management repository, so now it becomes the base for running the test project. Still, if there are some changes, then baseline will be changed. Okay, so this is the first step. First, we have to baseline the test plan and we have to integrate it with the configuration management repository. The next step is specifying the test cases. So basically, using the test plans as a base, the testing team designs test case specifications. So basically, what a test case will identify. A test case will identify that what is the purpose of the test and what are the items those are being tested along with the version or release. Okay, what is the environment that is required to be set up for running these kind of test cases? What are the input data or set of input data to be used for test case? And here I will say that choice of input data will be dependent on the test kit itself and the technique followed by the testers for the testing. For example, if we are using equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, then each and everything will be different. Okay, so next step is we have to make the steps, that what steps will be followed to execute the test. After that, we have to prepare a list of the results those are expected, that are considered to be correct results. These are not the results, those are actual results. These are the expected results. Okay. And next, when we get the actual results, then we have to compare the actual results with the expected results. And if there are some changes, then we have to work accordingly. Finally, we have to set a relationship between the test and other tests. So this can be in the form of dependencies among the tests on the possibility of reuse across the tests. So this is about test case specification. The next step towards the same is update of traceability matrices. So students, traceability matrices ensures that the requirements make it through the subsequent life cycle or life phases and do not get orphaned mid-course. That means whatever the requirements are should not be untouched. That means everything should be considered. Okay, basically traceability matrices are the tools to validate that each and every requirement we have considered or tested. This matrix is created basically during the requirement gathering phase, which is the upfront phase itself, by filling the unique identifier for each matrix. In this, we are using a unique identifier. So whenever there are some changes, we are doing the changes accordingly on the basis of this unique identifier. Subsequently, entries are continuous in the specified completely the rows that is related or corresponding to the requirement which is being tested by the test case will be updated again and again with the test case specification identifier. The main thing is identifier. That means if anything is related to a particular test case, it will be updated by the test case identifier. Okay, so here two-way mapping will be there between requirement and test cases. In the next step, that is identification of possible candidates for automation, what we are going to identify? Basically, we will identify either this test has to be performed manually or it is to be automated. So we know that in case we are going to select the automated tests, so what will be the features? If the task is repetitive, that means the repetitive nature of the test is there, amount of effort is very high, cost of tool is different, then we have to go for automation test. That means we have to identify that what test cases are manual and what test cases are automated. Okay, it also depends upon the amount of manual intervention, that means how much effort manually should be there. So this is basically to classify the test cases in terms of manual or automated. The next step is developing and baselining. This is about the test cases, not about the test plan. The initial discussion was about baselining of test plan, which will be integrated with the configuration repository, but it is regarding test cases. So we have to identify the automated test cases as well as manual test cases. In case of automated test cases, we have to use the automation language or any script. Okay, so basically here we have to maintain a history which is known as change history documentation that will specify that what to test. Okay, that will specify that what to test and why the change was necessary, who made the change, when was the change made. So these all things comes under developing and baselining the test cases, because test cases are also the things or I will say that these are the main things. Those should also have change history documentation. That's why we are talking about the points what, why, when and how. More points you can consider that a brief description of how the change was implemented or has been implemented, or other files affected by the change should be prepared properly. So this is all about developing and baselining the test cases. The next point is we have to execute the test cases and keeping the traceability matrices as current matrices. So what do you mean by this? As you know that now we have prepared the test cases, we have specified the test cases, we have developed and we have baselined the test cases. Now the prepared test cases have to be executed at the appropriate times during a project. So as the test cases are executing during a cycle, the defect repository is updated. That means if there are some problems, errors, bugs or any kind of defects in the execution, then we have to update. Okay, so we have to update it with the defects from earlier test cycles, that means the previous test cycles, and covering the new defects. So it will result in a defect repository, which is basically a primary tool of communication between the test teams and the development teams. So all the people or all the stakeholders should refer it and know the current status of it. Okay. Moreover, we can say that traceability matrices should be kept current while test design and execution. That means you are doing test design, you are executing test cases, and for the data of these test cases, there are some matrices known as traceability matrices. So you have to update them, you have to keep them current. Okay, so now we move to the next point, that is collecting and analyzing these matrices. When these matrices are updated, we have to collect them, we have to analyze them. Okay, So when we talk about collection, analysis and preparing the test summary report, because this is required for test summary, because whenever a test will be executed, some information will be generated. It should be collected, it should be logged, and it should be basically related to the measurements, and we have to take the measurements for any test case, text execution, or any related data. And after that, what we will do, we will call these things as a measurement, and we will take these measurements, we will convert these measurements into a meaningful matrix, which is basically updated test summary report. So after that, means at completion of a test cycle, we will be having a test summary report which will give us two things. It will give insights. These insights are useful for the senior management so that they can look into, and if they are going to change, then they can suggest the changes. As well as these reports are having details of each and every test case, specification, execution, bugs, errors, everything will be there. So this is the collection of matrices preparing the test summary report. So we can see a test process is also not a simple thing. It includes lot of steps, because after all these steps we are going to consider this next step, that is now we have to recommend the release of the product. So this recommendation is done by all of the people. Those are related to the testing. Testers are there, developers are there, senior management is there. So basically, one of the motive of the testing is to decide the fitness of a product release, that a product is fit for release or not. But we can say that testing is never proving the absence of defects in the product. That means it is just an evidence of that what defects are present, what will be the impact. That means it is telling two things, defects and their impression or impact. So the testing team only can tell that what defects are there, what are the severity of these defects, and what risks can occur regarding these defects. Then decision of release in business will be taken by the senior management. Okay, so this is all about test processes. So you have seen all the steps in the test process. Now in the next lecture we are going to consider a new topic, that is related to reporting. That means now we have completed test planning, test management, and as well as we have done test process today. So now the next step is to generate the reports and test reporting. So we are going to take this in the next lecture. Till then, thank you.